Namaste. I think I'll try reading from the smaller book. It's much easier to hold. And so now we are on stanza 45 of chapter 2. The Vedas teach that the universe is a mixture of three basic qualities or gunas. Your duty, Arjuna, is to free yourself from all of them, as well as from the dualities of nature. The way to this achievement is to remain ever calm in the self, free from any thought of either acceptance or possession. My guru gave a very interesting explanation of the gunas and how they operate. He said it's like the wave on the ocean, and that part of the wave which is closer to the ocean, the sattvic guna, or the sattvic person, he's a very little bulge there. Then Rajaguna is the power to push the wave up, and that is the middle part of the wave. And that part of the wave which is farthest away, and is just ready to crest and come crashing down, that is Tamoguna. And there are two directions of every wave. So always in the beginning, that which is closest to the surface of the sea, that is Sattva-guna. But then, as it moves downward, the Rajasic element pushes it either upward or downward. In this case, we're talking of the downward moving wave, the trough. Rajaguna also goes downward. And this is an interesting fact about Rajaguna. It can either elevate or depress. We must understand that Sattva-guna is the most important, but even that won't give you liberation, because Sattva-guna is still of the ego. We have to go beyond the three gunas. That's why in the Guru Stotra it speaks of Triguna Rahitam, beyond the three gunas. First, however, we have to bring our wave very close to the ocean. It's not so easily distinguishable from the ocean. It is humble. It is not self-asserting. Rajaguna is self-asserting. It gives power to the ego, and it gives power to material desires. And the food you eat also has an influence in these directions. Thus, dead food, overspiced food, this is tamasic because it helps to deaden your awareness. Rajasic food is red pepper and those things that keep you active, and tamasic food is fruits and so on, the calming foods. It would be very good to eat only those foods which are calming to you. There's an interesting thought here too, though. In this very Rajasic era in which we live, I remember Vivekananda saying that the Bengali peasants were not sattvic, they were tamasic. They're lazy. He said they need meat. And that was a very un-yogic thing to say, but it's very interesting that he did say it because it's the truth. You need to energize yourself in order to get out of tamas. So the uplifting tamas is that which helps you to become more active and more eager to get things done. But that same tamas can take you downward. So the food that you eat, the company that you keep, the places you go to, your outward environment is very important. Company is very important. Always mix with people who will help to uplift your consciousness. This is why it is said that a moment in the company of a saint will be your raft over the ocean of delusion. To mix with people who emanate good and spiritual vibrations helps to lift you too. Fortunately, we are not living in a vacuum. The world around us can help to make us more holy or less holy, but we're living among people. We're living among many people. And a hermit doesn't get that benefit. To mix with people who are spiritually inclined will help you to be that way too. So your food, your environment, the company you keep, the habits that you develop. Alcohol, for example, is very tamasic. It lowers the consciousness. It makes you sort of dull-minded. You can't think so clearly when you're bothered by alcoholic fumes. It's important to give that up. I know I used to drink some because it was something everybody did and I didn't know any better. But I remember going into a bar in New York when I was 21, and I think I was 22 already. It was the year I met my guru. But I went into this bar because it was very hot in New York, and I had a couple of beers, and they didn't bother me. It wasn't a bad thing, but I noticed that afterwards I wasn't quite so clear in my mind. And I thought, well, anything that's going to make me less clear, I don't want. So I gave it up from then on. Never had even the temptation to drink again. But all that you do in life can influence you. So try to get those influences that will clarify your not only your brain, but your bloodstream. Everything. Keep a clear, pure body. It would be good to fast 1 day a week. Yogananda recommended it. He also said it's a good thing to fast on orange juice for 3 days in a month. But the gunas are everything in life is a sort of a combination of these gunas. And the reason it is a combination is that everything is pushing outward from it, so that every little, even the sattvic wave, has its little crest at the top, and the little middle part, and the basic part. So even in sattva there is a mixture of tamo, rajo, and sattva. Even in the most rajasic wave that rises up and is ready to crest, there are these three aspects. And the gunas are everywhere operative. So try in your life to develop those gunas which will take you toward God. There are many things on the spiritual path that will help you to grow spiritually, which are not necessarily specific spiritual practices. But anything that you do will, if it takes you toward that goal, will be good for you. Anything that you do that will take you away from it or lessen your interest in it, your dedication to it, will take you away from God. So always look for the right food, the right company, the right circumstances, all this. And I've noticed that in traveling, it's important to try to go to those places which are not depressing. There are places in this world where, I remember one time I had come back from Europe to Ananda. Now you would think that the boundaries that we create by buying a property would be something man-made and not have any influence at all. But I remember taking this walk after I'd come back down the hill from where my house is. And then I walked back and I wasn't thinking where I was. But all of a sudden I said, my goodness, how peaceful it feels. We had just crossed the boundary into our property. When you come into California from Mexico, Mexico tends to be a bit sleepy. Coming into California, suddenly you feel this energy. Just crossing into different countries, you can feel it. And of course the boundaries were created by man, but somehow the consciousness of man does that. When you go from California into Nevada, that's a state where gambling is permitted, is legal. And you feel immediately somehow a sort of depressing feeling of taking, not giving. California has a giving energy. Nevada does not. And another interesting thing is going north from California to to Oregon. You feel suddenly a very sort of comfortable home kind of feeling. These are, you may call them imagination, but to me they're very real. And going to different places in the world, to feel the different vibrations of those places, to me, that's a much more interesting way to travel than to see the sights and go to the museums and do all the things that tourists usually do. I have found it much more helpful to feel. I remember when I went to the Holy Land, as we call it in the West, Israel, and I went into Capernaum, where Jesus was with his disciples. He sort of began his mission there. And I stood there and tried to feel. And it was really sort of like being a spiritual archaeologist, you might say. I could feel the different layers of vibration that had come since then, because after all, it was a long time since Jesus lived there. 2,000 years have passed since then. But suddenly I felt in tune with when he was there, just like burying down to that level. And all of a sudden I could feel the joy of those disciples, their joy in God, their joy in singing to God. It was a very real thing for me. And I have seen this again and again. Coming to India, as soon as the plane lands on Indian soil, I can feel an upliftment. It's a wonderful feeling. So don't look at places just for their wealth, just for their outward beauty, but feel it inside. In my travels, I have lived in many countries. As you know, although American, I was born in Romania. That was my home for the first 13 years of my life. And I was sent away to Switzerland, very different vibration. Then I was sent to England, to school there, very different vibration. Then we went to America, and the Second World War broke out, and we had to stay there. But it was very different. I didn't feel like an American there. It was just a strange place to be. But I have found, for example, that if I want to learn a language, if I tune in to the consciousness of the people who speak that language, then suddenly I can learn it more easily. I remember I was studying Italian, and I was in German Switzerland at the time, and somebody who was a friend of mine asked me a question about Italian. I said, I can't think of it now. When we get to Lugano, the Italian part of Switzerland, I'll have the answer. And sure enough, as soon as I came into Lugano, my mind was thinking in Italian ways, and it was easy for me to answer his question. So if you try to tune into the country, you will also be able to develop the skills of that country. If you try to tune into a person who has skills, feel in your heart and feel in his heart, and you will feel that sort of bridge between you, and you will be able to draw to yourself, by that attunement, skills that he has that you might not have developed. I've noticed this in so many ways. For example, in writing music, getting in tune with the consciousness of what it takes to write music, suddenly I found I could write it. And I didn't want to be a mathematician, but when I tried to be, I was pretty good at it actually. But in algebra, for example, they gave us certain shortcut tricks to help you to solve a problem. I didn't want to do that. I wanted to tune into algebra and to feel what it is that would give me that answer. And I got very good grades in that, but I never did any of those little tricks that the students were told that this would help them to solve that particular problem. You will see that if you want to become good at something, tune into the consciousness that makes it good. These are all a part of Raja, Tamo, and Sattva Guna. Put them in the wrong order, but you know what I mean. And the more you can feel that if you want to be a saint, then act like a saint. This is what I was saying with Yudhishthira when he was saying Ashwatthama is dead, and he named his elephant Ashwatthama. And so Dronacharya, who was the father of Ashwatthama, hearing that his son had died, he became discouraged, and Yudhishthira was able to destroy him. But the thing is that that wasn't a lie. Many people think of Yudhishthira as forsaken dharma when he told that lie that the elephant was Ashwatthama. He named him Ashwatthama. But in fact, Ashwatthama, as I've said before, stood for attraction. And that attraction, when you feel that you have an attraction to, let's say, liquor or power or anything, if you tell yourself, no, I'm not attracted, that's not a lie. It would be a lie if you said it insincerely, if you said it to impress other people. But if you say it to affirm that this is what I am, I'm not attracted to those things, it's important. Neti, neti, you don't want this, you don't want that. You're not being a hypocrite in saying it if you really mean it. Affirm a virtue, though you have it not, and you will find that you can become that. So, if you want to be a saint, then don't tell yourself you're a sinner. This is the worst sin you can commit, to call yourself a sinner. If you want to become a saint, then tell yourself, I am a saint. Hey, you know, you're a little short of it now, maybe. Don't laugh, though, because someday you will be a saint. So take it very seriously. You have the freedom of a saint. One time Yogananda said, the mere thought that I am not free is what makes you not free. And one disciple said to him, "But sir, if I said I'm not free, I wouldn't be free, would I?" And Yogananda said, "Oh yes. But the trouble is you answered your own question. You said, I wouldn't be." So you have to persuade yourself with your full conviction that I am free. And with all your contact with the world and so on, never allow yourself to think, this is I. Always say, this is not I am free. Your freedom of conscience, freedom of soul, the freedom of ego from all bondage of separateness, these are essential if you are to become that which you must become someday, one with God. So remember, you are His child. You are not a child of Maya. And this is one reason it is good to leave your home, because the home will always remind you, oh, little Donnie, as they used to call me. But you're not that. So if you're in a new group, this is why it's good to join a spiritual community, why it's good to enter an ashram. Enter a place where people are willing to define you in new ways and willing to think of you in terms of your spiritual progress instead of your own brother say, oh, come on down, have a drink. That wouldn't do it for you. So affirmation and the constant repetition of this thought that I am that. You will find your freedom if you affirm it. But the mere thought that you are not free is what keeps you there. This is something very important that Yogananda said. Always tell yourself, I am free. If you do that, sooner or later you will become what your affirmation has long been. You are a child of the infinite. Joy to you.